I got ADHD, baby. I set my goals, not your expectations, baby. I need my tools and a brain vacation, baby. Neurodivergent flow, no limitation, baby.
Thank you so much for coming. I feel like I've been really trying to reflect on what I'm doing with these IG lives. And I'm thinking that it's going to be like, I think I want to do like an ADHD like talk show or something like that. So think about this as like a talk show. Everybody that is listening. So the topic today is around entrepreneurship, ADHD, and just being prepared financially before you start a business, and to think about like what all of that entails. So we have Randall here. He is a financial advisor. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself because y'all know I cannot remember anybody's bio. And everybody has such impressive experiences that I don't want to leave anything out. So with that being said, Randall, do you mind introducing yourself?
No problem. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Randall Avery. I'm a registered investment advisor. I specialize in three major areas. That is retirement planning, self-employed individuals, and practice owners. Now, my journey, how I got to my niche is kind of unique because I actually started off working with mental health professionals.
Okay.
So you think about licensed professional counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and being exposed to this world really exposed me to the ADHD, what people go through, what their experiences are. And something that's unique about the ADHD world is they tend to desire to go out on their own because it's tough for them to sit in a cube, bang a cube into a small hole 100 times over and over again. So there is a drive to go out on your own. So I'm going to enjoy doing this live, kind of sharing what some of the entrepreneurs that I work with have done, some of the things that I've done, and some of the things that I learned that can help people who are suffering with ADHD.
That's awesome. And to note too, so I'm having these lives like almost once a week, right? But some of our guests have ADHD, some of them don't. And you do not have ADHD, correct?
Correct.
And so I will chime in with some like ADHD things for those that are listening to this conversation or that are listening to the replay, as well as an ADHD coach. And again, let me just introduce myself, which I never do. I am Megan Brown Enya, and I am the head coach and founder of ADHD at Work, and I serve women with ADHD and trying to ensure that they're thriving in their career and in life. And so I'm doing these IG lives, aka maybe turn into some ADHD talk show situation, to bring some more awareness around ADHD. I started this last year during October ADHD Awareness Month, and I'm continuing it in 2025. It is important to continue to increase your awareness around ADHD regardless of the current attack on creating inclusive workspaces. So we are going to be fighting the fights and ensuring that the community is empowered in all things that sometimes we like to avoid and sometimes we really are hyper-focused on. And so again, like this topic is all about finances and entrepreneurship and ADHD. So thank you so much, Randall, for joining this conversation. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, I mean, where do we start? There's so much to talk about when it comes to just navigating the financial space, but just being an entrepreneur in general. But then finances and entrepreneurship aren't necessarily something that we want to deal with as somebody like as an adult with ADHD, and we have a lot of feelings about it, and we can position ourselves to kind of avoid that. But I think when we first started this conversation around like what we were going to talk about, the idea of prepping people like before you jump into something. As ADHD, we're super creative and we literally have a new business idea every other day. And so how do we stop, slow down, and then answer some key questions or navigate some really key areas before we jump into head first into the business, and then we get bored or overwhelmed and then avoid it and then jump into the next business and then we're in debt. And so we don't want to do that. So I know you had mentioned prior to this call that you had some points that you wanted to share. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, let's go ahead. So when somebody, this world glamorizes being an entrepreneur, being out on your own, determining your own destiny. And a lot of people begin with, I'm a talented individual. I'm a capable individual. Therefore, I surely can make it out on my own. But I think one thing that people have to understand is, and especially for this audience, is being an entrepreneur is a social exercise, meaning it takes people. An individual contributor cannot start or run or usually become successful by themselves. There's always exceptions, but across the board, when you think about starting your business, you are going to need people, you're going to need customers, you're going to need mentors to really move that forward. So the first thing I want people to think about is knowing that being an entrepreneur is a social experiment. And I don't know if you want to chime in on that before I move into my first point.
Yeah, I do. So, and it's so right. And it's so funny that you say that because when I think about myself as an entrepreneur, and as an adult with ADHD, I'm like, oh, I can do everything, right? Negative. I cannot. And now that I have moved into this space, you realize that there is so much additional support that you need in order to be successful. And just to make note, as those of the ADHD, like always talk to my clients about what their strengths are, like being clear about what their strengths are, but also what their weaker executive functions are. And so when you're starting a business, you really need to be clear about that because those weaker executive functions is where you're going to be needing help. So if you don't know where to get help from, start with what am I going to be struggling the most with? What are the areas that cause me to feel a little bit more emotionally dysregulated? What are the things that make me feel overwhelmed? And those are the areas where you should find somebody to help support you. But do not, he's absolutely correct. Do not think that you're going to be walking into this business and think that you can do everything by yourself, because you're not going to be able to.
Spot on, spot on. So what I recommend folks is to do, it's this term I like to call 100 cups of coffee. That's whatever industry you're in, whether you're in finance, whether you are in counseling, whether you are going into some type of consulting or coaching. Find at least 100 individuals in that industry. They could be supporting that industry, whether they're an accountant who does those things. They could be actual practitioners. Find a way to sit down with them. It could be as simple as a cup of coffee. It could be go take them out to lunch. It could be just give them a call, reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, sit down with them and say, hey, this is my idea. This is what I'm thinking about doing. And what type of feedback do you have for me? A lot of people say, well, I don't know what questions to ask. You should not be concerned with that. Just explain what your entrepreneurship dream is, and they will provide feedback. And take notes on that feedback. And as you do more of these calls, ask more of these questions, you will begin to kind of solidify what your offering is actually going to be.
And so, okay, I think that's really good because I think that you're going to be able to get a lot of information from a lot of people to help really be clear about what your needs are as a business owner, and then who your target market is, and just to bring some clarity about what it is that you're actually doing, and to be realistic. So go from here to down to here, and and bring some reality into the situation. But there's some things that you need to be mindful of. Like if you're especially as somebody with ADHD, you're having these conversations and you're doing some networking. So one, just networking. What does networking look like with ADHD? Do you have any types of feelings and thoughts about interacting with new people? Me personally, I love talking to random people. It's the building more solid relationships part that kind of sometimes trips me up. But talking to random people, I can have 50 million first-time conversations. That's fun. But getting deeper can be a little bit difficult. So there's that. But then you think of like, oh man, I have to talk to 100 people. You don't want to get overwhelmed by that. And how can you slow down, take it in smaller bites, and then be really clear about who you're looking to talk to about different topics and spread that out. But what is good about this concept of speaking to as many people as possible is that it allows you to really be clear about whether or not this is the business that you want to go into. And it will slow you down so that you're not jumping into something without knowing all the details, and then realizing halfway through that you don't want to do any of this anymore, and then you wasted a whole bunch of money.
Spot on. And I also like to tell folks, try to find people. I definitely believe you need a diversity of people to speak to, but I want folks to key on people who look like them. So if you're a young lady, try to find a young lady to talk to. If you're a young man, try to young man. Even going down to socioeconomic class and race, talk to somebody who's started off in your situation or is in your situation that is in that industry you want to work for. Because I think they'll give you a different perspective on how you can navigate yourself, because it is different. And even somebody who maybe have ADHD, if you're
Mm-hmm.
also somebody who may be on the spectrum, talk to somebody who has those situations. That way you can kind of know how to navigate the ask kind of what checks and balances that you put in your life to
Mm-hmm.
become successful.
Yeah, especially speaking to another business owner that has ADHD, so you can be clear about how ADHD can impact your business trajectory, um, whether or not, and that's a individuals at different levels of their business too, right? Like, so what does it look like to talk to somebody that has ADHD that's in the beginning stages, middle stages, or has scaled their business and where they're at? Because once you start to scale your business, you do take on a different role within that business. And is that something that you're interested in or concerned about or confused about? And so being able to be clear about that. Also, because like, I love coaching, but, as I business scales, like at some point, like you're going to be moving away from the coaching part to a certain extent, unless you structure your business that into a place where it allows me to still continue to coach, and then positioning somebody else to kind of do the business operations part. And so you just, talking to different mentors will help bring some increase your awareness to some of those challenges that may come up. Especially, I mean, and you find this even in 9 to 5, right? Like you start with one position and then you get promoted to management and you're like, wait, I don't want to manage people, right? But now you're promoted and now you're in this position to managing people and you're just like, but I just want to do the things. Like, I just want to do the things. Like, I don't want to lead people to do the things. And so navigating some of those conversations and those nuances as your business grows.
And the last
Um,
thing I want to talk on is that when you have these conversations, discuss things like vendors. Who are they using as an accountant? Who are they using for their sales tracking system? What are they doing for whatever that industry is doing? Take note of those little granular details, because when you're, like you said, as your business grows and you say, hey, I have that need. Well, Sue told me about XYZ. John told me about Y. Well, let me try this out. So that way you're not scrambling just as soon as a problem comes, because you've already had these conversations.
Yeah, that's good. Do you find that if people come to you like as a financial advisor, are there certain things that they typically get tripped up on that they're seeking your advice for?
Is this regarding their finances or within business? They're operating their
And
business.
operating their
Okay.
business.
Yeah, I think the number one thing they get tripped out on is really pricing. You think when you're an entrepreneur, you have the privilege of saying, this is how much I'm going to charge for X. Well, that charge for X, one has to be able to reinvest money back into the business and be able to fund your lifestyle. So I think the number one kind of concern folks have, especially when they come to me, is how much should I be charging for what I do? And it's a very complicated answer.
Yeah. Um, that immediately thought about some conversations that I've had with clients about that too. And also like coaching colleagues. Like I feel like I'm always having sidebar conversations with other coaches and saying like, how much are we supposed to be charging? And ADHDers can sometimes have a really strong social justice sense too. And so it's like we don't want to overcharge people or feel like we're ripping people off, but at the same time, we need to make it a marketable like option and be price competitive. Um, and then what are thinking about some other ways to navigate how much we're charging people and so that we still feel good about it. Um, and because I mean, some people don't care; they're like whatever. But a lot of people that have a really strong sense of social justice are like, I don't want to. I want to be able to provide the service because I feel like, you know, this is a service that people need, but I don't want to take advantage of them either. But I also don't want to be poor, and I don't want to like I don't want to go into negative every month or not be able to pay my bills either. And so trying to navigate all of that when it comes to pricing.
Yeah.
Um,
In our recent times, what I've seen is that people use, you know, a freemium model, an affordable model, and let's call it the real business service model. So the freemium model could be what we're doing right now, getting the word out about, you know, ADHD and different circumstances that people should think about. We're not charging anything. We do this out of the count of our heart, but it does take time. The affordable model is something maybe like a group coaching thing I've heard a lot of counselors do. And maybe the more premium is that one-on-one interaction where you can charge a pretty full price. So one way to think about pricing, if you have a heart towards social justice, you have a heart towards a certain population, is how can you do a freemium model or a low discount model, but still keep kind of like your premium model that pays the bills, keeps the light on, and allows you to do things like this, like a live.
and then side note, people that are listening, if you have questions that you want to ask either of us, go ahead and put them in the chat or the comment section at the bottom, and we will try to answer them as we see them also. So don't feel like you need to wait for any particular time to say it. We'll answer your questions as we go along. Okay, so pricing, and also, you know, with especially with ADHD, there's like, there can, you know, a lot of the core characteristics of ADHD really are rooted in emotional, like being able to regulate our emotions, right? And so there's a lot of shame that comes up when it comes to trying to manage our finances in general, but then thinking about the business as well. And like tax season is going to be coming up, and depending on where you live and what kind of business you're doing, that whole process can look really different. And ensuring that we're not avoiding those conversations that we need to have with ourselves, and then also with other people. But how have you seen your clients? Do you support your clients in terms of the accountability part? Like, how do you see the accountability measures? Because it can, like, I don't know how many people I feel like I've talked to, and then like, oh my God, I'm still doing my taxes from like 2021. Never mind 2025. And so staying up on top of that, but that can impact like your business licensures or certifications, or depending on what it is that you're doing. And so being on top of that and knowing that it can, like, knowing yourself enough to know whether or not dealing with the money part of your business is going to cause some type of feeling, and ensuring that you're putting in a different strategies in place so that that part doesn't get avoided.
Yeah. So
And that,
yeah,
yeah,
so there's two different types of entrepreneurs. There is the do everything you can do, like jack of all trades. They can make a social media post, they can write an article, they can service their clients, they can do all the things in the hats. And then there's another type of entrepreneur where they are really good at this one thing, and either out of necessity or out of practicality, they have to outsource everything. So I think as an entrepreneur, you have to figure out what type are you, and what are you actually skilled at. Now, for this conversation, we're going to talk with people with ADHD. Well, they're probably going to be the folks that are really good at one thing and need to outsource all those other things. Okay, really have systems in place so that those things can run on a systematic basis, where they can still have a little bit of level to bounce around, and freedom and wiggle room from that aspect. Now, what I do for my clients is really just goal setting, and like you said, hold them accountable. So we sit down with them and say, hey, this is what you want to do. These are your aspirations. This is what you want. How do we get there? What steps do we need to go there? And on some clients, I meet actually on a monthly basis, and we say, this is the goal we set. Where are you, and how do we get there? And there's, as any coach or any situation, is that check-in, that knowing you have to talk to somebody about your circumstances, that's what moved the needle. One thing about your taxes, there are people who, you know, don't have ADHD and they still haven't filed their taxes since 2020. So I think that's just a business owner thing, you know, pushing things to the side. that happens, but I think if you have somebody in your life to say, hey, did you do those things, that's
Hmm.
when that stuff doesn't fall to the side. If you don't have anybody looking at your book saying, why didn't you do that, then you sometimes you will kind of let that fall to the side.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you said that because I mean, taxes are unnecessarily complicated in my personal opinion. There's a lot of tax code, but it also requires you to really be able to create some systems throughout the year to track your
Yeah.
spending, to track what's going in, what's going out, like separating accounts. Like if you're starting to use one account for everything, like the back end can get really messy. And then so taking the time to sort through all of that, especially if you feel some type of way about like, dang, like it's December, dang it, I should have just followed the system that I set in place in June. And if you didn't, so now you're like, okay, well now I need to take this time to actually, I mean, so I'm calling myself out here.
Come on, let it in.
calling, calling myself out. And now I'm like, oh, man, now I need to make sure that I take probably 2 weeks to go through everything and sort through everything and just making sure that you're building in that time. So if you are going to avoid it, just know that eventually you can't. And so let's just say like maybe you're making a conscious decision to not be on top of everything. Okay. Would I recommend it? Probably not. Is that what I did last year?
Yeah.
Yes. But but are we doing that in 2025? No. And so but I now know though that I'm going to have to dedicate an extended amount of time in order to fix it. And you may or may not be okay with doing that. And so just keep that in mind. And so, what we talked about just now is like ensuring that you have some level of accountability, creating some type of accountability system, having those check-ins, having a financial advisor that you can reach out to around specific questions is really helpful. If you have access to an ADHD coach, you can do that as well. We'll be doing check-ins so I have a Thrive program for women with ADHD, and those that are members of Thrive, we will be doing some check-ins. And we're going to be doing a goals workshop, which event will be open to everybody for them to join too. But having that accountability is so important. Um, so important for us as well. But yeah,
Now,
taxes are.
yeah, what I've noticed is that, so like I said, having a coach has a cost, have a financial planner has a cost. A way, like I said, we have to really help people where they are today.
Mhm.
Sometimes that community can be your accountability partner.
Yes.
Get with the community of entrepreneurs who have different specialties. Some people may be hyper anal about their accounting, and make sure they look at you and say, did you do that number? While you may be hyper anal about posting on a regular basis and say, did you post and why didn't you? So
Mhm.
some things can be supplemented with community because I talk to real people and they have real costs and expenses. So I just can't say, get a professional, but start off with the community and then get
Okay.
to somebody who is a professional who can take you to that next level when you can get there.
That is so true. And there's a lot of community available, especially now in this upcoming increased awareness around ADHD. There's a lot of different groups on Facebook. I don't know if there's like local groups as well. Sorry, um, local groups that people can access to. But yes, reaching out to people and making sure that even if it's just a small social network, like let's say if it's like your best friend or sometimes family may or may not be the person that holds you accountable. But sometimes it is.
And if none of those work, have you ever heard of SCORE, SCORE? So
Uh-uh.
SCORE is kind of like a nonprofit organization, and they will actually provide you a mentor specifically to your industry and what you're trying to accomplish. It's 100% free. They can meet with you on a however frequent basis that you want to. And these are usually ex-executives that will really listen to you about your business. And I think that's something that's not talked about a lot. Even your spouse won't sit down and go, line for line with you, or somebody you're romantically involved with, line by line with your business and what you're going through. They don't have the patience. They have their own lives, and business can be kind of boring and icky at times. But if you can find somebody who's willing to go there with you, go to that dark part of your business with you, and geek out with you for a bit, I think I think that could be valuable. So score.com, it's 100% free, or score.org. Just Google it, and I think a lot of people will be impressed with some of the things that they offer.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up. I feel like within my own business, I'm like, oh man, I think I need a mentor. In order to really get to the next level, within my own business. But yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up. And there are a lot of, and also like the small business associations, they always usually have like, go to your local small business association. They usually have workshops and other leaders and other business leaders within the organization that can help support you as well. I know our local one was always having events as well.
Yeah.
And just kind of Google that. And you want to be in a place where you don't feel shamed by what's going on. Because the moment you feel shame, then you're not going to want to ask the question. And that's gonna get in the way of you being successful.
Right.
Yeah, and so you're gonna have to deal with that. Anybody have any questions before we just start talking about some other things? Or is there something in particular that you want us to make sure that we talk about when it comes to entrepreneurship and finances? We talked about taxes. So you said the first thing that comes up, what was it again?
Have 100 cups of coffee. So try to meet with as many people as you can within the industry you're trying to work in.
Yeah, let's talk about networking. You had mentioned LinkedIn. How successful have you felt like you've been with LinkedIn and getting support?
I think LinkedIn, really like any platform, is kind of what you put into it. So success can sometimes be relative. I put in a lot of work on LinkedIn, and I'm not sure if I get a strong ROI, but I have found results that I've been looking for, whether that's grow network, gain clients from it. But it is something that you have to massage and something that you have to be strategic with. So I don't think anybody just blasting can get results. I think you have to actually have a strategy like anything else when you go into it.
Yeah. I feel like I have like a non-strategy strategy. Like, I feel like my strategy with LinkedIn is just be my authentic self. And if people roll with it, then they roll with it. And if they don't, they don't. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. If you want to be a part of it, great. If you don't, oh well. And that's how I've been operating in that space when it comes to networking and being really confident in what it is that I'm doing and my why, and really being very clear about why I'm doing something, and just taking that super authentic approach to contacting people on LinkedIn, I think has been really helpful for me. Like that's been my strategy. Showing up as authentic as possible. And so removing the mask, which can be really hard. A lot of us with ADHD have been wearing masks for a really long time because we're just needing to present the way that everybody else around us wants us to present in order to be accepted. And once you learn more about ADHD, more about your brain, and accept it, and the more authentic and mask-free you can be, the easier it has been to be able to connect with other people to help support my business. And that's a process.
Yeah, it's a process. And so I start off kind of in that traditional corporate world, but going out on my own, meeting I would like to call real entrepreneurs. You'll be surprised the quirks folks have who become successful, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So just know that whatever situation that you find yourself in, it can work. It's going to take a lot of work, but it can work, and just get out there. That's why I say meet as many people, like you said, network, and meet as many people as possible. And you're surprised that, wow, they were able to persevere even though they clearly have this thing holding them back. And once you see that over and over again, it's not picturesque, it's not beautiful as people try to project. I think that's when real life hits. And I think a lot of the steps that I'm actually trying to explain is it kind of takes that veil on that pretty image, and it's really like, hey, this is how the real world works. Get into it if you want to, or step to the side if you're not ready to handle it.
Yeah. One thing I want us to make sure that we don't do, though, as people with ADHD, is that when we start talking to people, our brains will just be going, right? And then we'll get a lot of ideas, and recognizing that not every idea is something that we need to act on. But if you're concerned about losing that idea, being able to put it in a safe space. And so always going back to your why and what it is that you're doing and what you want to do, because every single time you talk to somebody, it may trigger something else, and it may trigger you to move into a different direction in your business, but you still always have to kind of come back to the core and not get 100% like distracted by all that you will encounter once you start talking to people. And so always going back and being very clear about your vision and your purpose and your why and what it is that you're trying to do. Yeah, we've had some other entrepreneurs on. In October, I cannot remember her name off the top of my head. But if we go to my YouTube channel, we talked to a woman who turned her family recipes into a kind of comic cookbook, a visual cookbook, and she talked a little bit about her entrepreneurial journey. Yeah. And then we're going to have another couple of entrepreneurs over the course of the year talking about their stories too, and how ADHD has impacted their journey. So everybody that's listening, keep that in mind, is that there's going to be some more content there. And feel free to reach out to my guests too and ask them questions. I mean, I'm kind of volunteering you. Sorry.
Please do. You can reach out to me. I'm an open book.
Yeah. Everybody's been really helpful, because how did we connect? Was it LinkedIn?
Your LinkedIn, so it does work.
Yeah, it does work. I think a lot of my guests in October, I reached out to LinkedIn too. And again, random. I was like randomly contacting people and like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Does this sound interesting to you?
Yeah.
Yay or nay? And once I turned that mask off, and I will say that it is very, very difficult for me to put the mask on now. That it's been off. And so walking into some spaces, I'm like, I don't have time for this mask thing anymore. And so just recognizing, though, like, I have to be aware, though, that sometimes, I'm not saying that wearing a mask is necessary, but also I don't need to go into every space on 30. Also, and so kind of being a little bit aware of context. I think context matters.
I think when you're in the service business, you have to realize that to transact money, they need a level of authenticity, right? Mm-hmm. For somebody to pay you for a service, a professional service, they have to see you. Okay, they can't see this cookie cutter person, because if they want a cookie cutter, they can just go to the big box, whatever retail or whatever service provider they wanted to. When they come to an individual, a smaller business, they want that touch, that softness that only you can bring. And I think that's what folks have to realize, that, hey, if you're going on this entrepreneurship journey, you have to be yourself. That doesn't give you an excuse not to get better, but come as you are. Let the people who accept you. And I think also some people predetermine who their audience is going to be. In the world of entrepreneurship, sometimes it's who loves you is the people you love back on.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm glad that you said that, because I think it is really important, because masking is something that we have spent so many years doing as ADHD, but as an entrepreneur, it's not helpful, because you're not able to bring that unique thing that you bring to your business and make that very clear for people if you're spending energy and time trying to please everybody else around you.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work. And they will see through you, the ideal customer. So just be yourself. Like I said, that does not give you an excuse not to be better. Always look to be better. Always look to get feedback, but you can't hide who you are.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of feedback, I think, feedback is part of the process. And everybody's going to have an opinion. And then if you're on social, clearly everybody has an opinion. And so, you just kind of have to be mentally prepared for that and identify what your responses are going to be, and also positioning yourself to know when it's getting to you or not. Especially in this world of social media, because everybody has something to say.
The way I see feedback or opinions is, and it's probably because of my background, so I see them as data points. Once I see a consistent data points, either that's, you're always going to maybe put them in like quote unquote the hater category, or it could be actually constructive feedback. So just when you receive something that caught you off guard, like you said, just ball it up and put into a point and say, okay, I can reference that later. If somebody keeps putting that point up and up again, that's maybe something you should maybe pay attention to. And that's where you go back to those previous, people that you met with 100 cups of coffee, be like, hey, I'm getting this feedback. What does that mean to you? Instead of you taking that feedback and internalize it year after year, day after day, like, no, this is a community thing. You have to really talk it out with people, get it out, and then they can kind of, put things in context. People love, and trust.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And also, if maybe you just need a cathartic exercise, just print them. You see people that pin their comments and they'll do a reel and like show all like the crazy comments that come up. Like that can actually be really empowering. Or printing them and putting them on a board and throwing darts at them. Or taking them, crippling them up and throw them away. Like doing some type of exercise so that you are not internalizing the information that will come to you that's starting to eat away at you or make you doubt what it is that you're doing.
And people
because
realize that going into business, in my opinion, is a form of artistic expression. And when you put your art out for people to see, to judge, they have an opinion, and some could argue they're entitled to an opinion if you put yourself out there. So just know, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, opinions, feedback is what you're inviting into your life. And then I think if you accept that truth, you can kind of prepare yourself mentally for those things.
Yeah, and as you're having these 100 conversations and slowing down before you jump into a new business, you can also use this time to also mentally prepare like how you're going to react to these comments and to these conversations and to these people that are going to have unsolicited advice or opinions that could potentially make you feel bad. Like, what is your plan in order to deal with that? And so, like, before you jump into this business, thinking about that too, because that's going to derail your growth, and it could impact like other aspects of your world, your relationships. You could withdraw from people that you actually really need to stay connected to. And at the end of the day, it's going to mess with your business and your money.
Right.
And so if you have a financial trajectory that you're looking to try to reach, and you've done some forecasting, do you work with people to help them do forecasting?
So for some of my clients around this time, actually February, we'll sit down and say, where do you want to be at the end of the year? How many clients you need to have? What are your expenses? This is the profit that you're looking for. Because that helps, one, it helps them, but it also helps me in the sense of, well, how much can we invest for their future?
Yeah. Like, of course, I don't, in a very ADHD way, I feel like I was probably needed to wake up for something, and I set an alarm for like every 15 minutes. So one went off at 7:30 and one went off at 7:45. But yeah, I think that's important too. Like, there's a lot of work that you should be doing before you just kind of jump into it. And with very cognitive impulsivity, and you get really excited. ADHD is a very interest-driven brain, and it's like the next new thing that is bringing you joy and exciting you might jump into. I will also say that, let's just make this point about sometimes, like, we can be very creative and have a lot of hobbies, and like deciding whether or not this is a business or is this a hobby, and being okay with that.
And I think, if you don't mind, I could go to my second point. I think that touches on that a lot. So my second point, so after your 100 cups of coffee, the second thing is try to serve your ideal client without charging them. This to me is where the rubber meets the road. Okay, so you don't have to worry about feedback. You're not charging. You should take the feedback and take it into account, but try to see if somebody who you think is your ideal client will want this service. This way, while you're providing the service, you can see, do I enjoy this? Do I want to charge for this? Does this feel comfortable for me? Do I feel like I can do this at scale? And then the second thing is, after you're done with completing that project or whatever you're doing, you can actually see the value add. So once you've done this enough value added for so many people, I feel like you can kind of handle more feedback when you begin charging, because it's like, no, 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 no. I know the value that it produces. I have proof of concept, and I have a living, breathing, the person you provided that service to, saying that, hey, no, he has some validity. So the next thing I'll do is kind of serve your ideal client before charging.
So what does that look like? This question just popped up in my head. What does that look like for product-based businesses versus service-based businesses? Because I feel like, it's easy to just give up my time and just serve somebody. But with the products, like now, do I have to, like, am I going to be buying all these things in order to like test the market? And then I feel like there's a different way of doing it, no?
So I mean, as we've probably all experienced, we've all gone to kind of like a survey thing where people give you the product, taste it. How do you taste it? Give you feedback. Okay. We've been to the big box kind of warehouse grocery stores where they actually, give you samples. So this is not a new thing as a product. You may have a book and maybe you provide a chapter of the book, or you have an online course and maybe provide some snippet of it. So giving samples, giving is not something that's foreign, and I think it's something that you should build into if you're thinking about going out on your own. So I think everything can be put out in the market so you can receive adequate feedback.
Yeah. And I think when I think about the corner of things that I have over here, from all the things from all the things that I've been making in life, and maybe I should do a reel just showing what I'm pointing to looks like, with the pile of things that I have bought over the years to make different items that everybody had told me that, oh, you should sell this, and I believed it.
Yeah.
And then, I buy all these things and I realize that actually I really just enjoy making these things, and it's not a business.
Yes.
And I want to maintain and to continue some part of some level of joy in my life. And, that happened with earrings, right? Like I make earrings on top of doing everything else, right? But I really only started making them because the ADHD in me kept losing my earrings. I kept losing them. And I was like, well, let me just make them, because if I lose one, then I can just remake it and they don't have to look the same anyway. But then people see them, I tell them that I make it, and then people now want to buy it, and then it's like becomes this whole thing. And being able to have a little bit of self-control so that you can decide whether or not this is an opportunity that you actually want to invest the time, the energy, the money, and additional resources into creating a business, or do you just want to have cute earrings?
Yeah. Do you want to, or just gain that competency? So it's okay to learn how to cook. That doesn't mean you have to be a baker.
Right. Exactly.
It's okay to be able to really sit down and counsel your friends. It does not mean you need to be a therapist. And it's okay to go to school for something and not use it as well. So like these things, once you start testing things at a scale, so you may love it, do it twice, but once you do it 20 times, you're completely exhausted. These are what is not discussed when we talk about going out on your own. It's people think, well, you got to charge for what you do. Love what you do enough to give it away and see value to society. And I think that's a different thought process.
Yeah, I agree. Wait, did anyone have any questions before? I don't think so. No questions, y'all? No worries. I hope that entrepreneurs are listening to this call and getting some really good information, because it is so important.
Yes.
And this is such an important topic. And it's great having somebody in finance to be able to help us along the way. Are there any like thinking like specifically about things that you just kind of need to take into consideration when it comes to your finances, just from the financial perspective, financial advisor perspective? What would you tell us?
I would say have a, and this is a big ask. Don't get me wrong. I live in the real world. I deal with real people. The big ask really is that have a financial cushion before you go out on your own, because that allows you to be patient. You don't have to take every client. You don't have to do everything, and you don't have to compromise your work if you have that financial cushion. So the number one thing, if you can afford it, and I know a lot of people can't afford it, really try to have around 6 months, I would say even a year, of just living expenses taken care of before you make that leap. And I think that that's an important thing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't have the luxury to have.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's important too. And you know, there's a lot of us too that are working a 9 to 5 and then trying to do the entrepreneurship thing on the side.
Yep.
When do you know when to quit?
So I have a controversial take on that. I know they say use your full-time job to fund your dream. I've heard that a lot. But let me add a counter that's something that may offend some people. Part-time effort gets part-time results. If you're doing something part-time, how can you get that part-time result? So when you're at your 9 to 5 job, you know, if somebody sends on a project that needs to be done last minute, you rush to get it done. And guess what gets pushed to the side? Your part-time work. Now, when you're an entrepreneur and it's 100% of what you're doing, you will go that extra mile. You do those extra 20 reach outs. You'll follow up, do that follow-up email. You'll go to those different network events. You'll have that extra energy to smile when you're not happy all the time. So when you're ready to jump, like I said, if you do those steps beforehand, meet with enough people, serve your ideal clients, and you love what you do, take a leap. And yeah, of course, I had to have a little bit of a financial cushion. Take the leap if that's what your heart's desiring. Nobody's pushing anybody to become an entrepreneur. But if you've done those steps and your heart's still fluttering and warm, I think the scariest thing is to look back and say, hey, when I had the energy, when I had the opportunity, I didn't make that jump. Now, where am I at today? That's what I don't want people to look back and worry about.
Yeah. And I think that point is important, especially if you want to just be an entrepreneur full time and you're trying to figure out how to make that transition. However, some people just want to have some extra cash on the side.
And I think that goes into the hobby category. You get a profitable hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Like you can be an amazing caterer, but you can only do Saturdays in between these hours and only twice a month. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's for people who aspire to, you know, make this a full-time thing. I think you have to consider those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about, and the other thing, just to add, just only because this is part of my story, and you know, I work with a lot of women, and some of us are mothers too, and mothers like trying to juggle taking care of children or a child in addition to yourself, which usually always ends up being last, and potentially doing a 9 to 5 and potentially doing a business. And I would say like really like as you're taking these 100 days or 100 conversations, that whole time frame, however you want to describe it, is also really carving out some time to think about how much energy you actually have.
Yes.
And be realistic about that. And I have to catch myself too. I'm like, oh, I feel like I can do everything. Oh, I have this idea. Let me go ahead and do this. I have that idea. Let me go ahead and do this. Let me drive my assistant crazy because I have a new idea every month. Like, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. And so, you know, I have given my assistant permission to say like, okay, Megan, I know that you have another idea, but can we table that until we finish the first 3? Like, we only have so much time in a day. And so being realistic with yourself, but then also giving somebody that you trust permission to say, not. not right now. Like you have a 15-month-old. Like where are you going? Um,
I think what is it? RBG Ruth Gaynor Greensburg, the Supreme Court Justice. I think she
mhm.
passed, the late. So she said you can have anything that you want, you just can't have it all at once.
It's true.
And I think that goes with entrepreneurship. There's gonna this I don't glamorize entrepreneurship. There will be some sacrifices. There will be
Hmm.
some stuff that hits the ground and some balls drop, and you have to make that values-based decision to say, is this something that I want? I can handle. So I think that that's something every entrepreneur has to say is like, am I willing to take an L in these portions of my life to manifest this thing that I want, which is my business?
Yeah, and then before we head out, because I have a hard stop at 8, but the English is just making a point around the emotional management when it comes to finances, and it's so true. The emotional dysregulation that can happen when it comes to managing money, and it's not even just, I mean, we're talking in some cases it's trauma. Like it's trauma, it's how we grew up, it's our what was our original ideology around money. Like are we changing the way that we think about money? Like what work do we have to do as individuals before we jump into this business that requires you to really reflect and do that work that's going to be hard and it's going to be emotional around money, um, and addressing that and working and doing strategies and doing emotional regulation strategies that can also be helpful. Like I like to put emotional regulation strategies in 3 different categories. Like one is like the CBT category and really doing thought work. And then another one's kind of in the DBT category and around like getting through your emotions quicker and really addressing them, naming them and addressing them and getting through them. And then I think about like somatic work and what how to regulate your brain, and how does your emotions like feel in your body and letting them kind of move through. So some somatic and nervous regulation work, CBT and DBT. But learning what those exercises are, practicing them because it's going to come up.
Yes.
It is going to come up, and building in that time to deal with it because it's going to come up.
Mhm.
And like we're talking about little things like avoiding opening your bank app. You don't even want to look at it. Um, and how do you build in some systems to like automatically doing automatic payments or stopping the impulsivity or seeing the next new tech app or the next new AI monthly subscription that you're going to add to your business and being able to keep track of that and then realizing that now you have 13 subscriptions that you're paying for and you really don't need any of them. And yeah, and the anxiety that can come with that. And those are things that like building in the systems and learning some techniques around managing your emotions. I'm calling people out. I'm calling myself out, if I'm being honest. And building in those techniques and learning what they are so that you have a toolbox of resources to access when they come. And that's why it's helpful to work with a coach in that aspect, or working in some ADHD group, or doing some type of connecting in some type of ADHD community, because that emotional dysregulation, you will avoid all types of stuff, and then you'll find yourself in debt and don't even know. Um, and it's so real with being an entrepreneur. But I hate to cut this conversation short, but I gotta go. And we've taken up so much of Randall's time, and I really, 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 really appreciate you joining me in a conversation about this. I think it's such an important topic, and we'll be talking more and more about this as a community. But again, I really am thankful for your time. Is there anything else that you want to add before we jump off?
I would just say, entrepreneurship is a challenge, but it is worth it for those who want it for themselves, and just
Mhm.
have fun with it, smile, laugh, and cry, just like a relationship. That's how business is.
Yeah, and then how do we find
Yeah,
you?
so you can reach me, you can go on my Instagram handle, so it's going to be RSADEASIL50. Or you can reach me on my website, which is going to be www.deasilwm.com. So you can reach me online, Google me. I should be able to pop up. And if you're looking for, a financial planner, and if you're a practice owner looking to go out on your own, I help people transition to going out on their own. Those are some of the things that I help folks with.
And then, is that a book? Do you have a book behind you?
Oh, yes, I do. So I am the author of the book, Hacking the System by Creating Your Own System. See here.
Okay.
So this is for something, if you find yourself really struggling with, I'm not winning with money, what's really holding me back? I think that's something you can look on. It's on Amazon right now. It also have an audiobook option for those, who prefer to listen while they drive or do other things. So definitely check out my book, Hacking the System by Creating Your Own System.
And please note that if you ever do these lives with me, put your book in the background because I'm going to call you out on it. So this recording will be on YouTube, and Randall, if you can just send me all of the links to all the things you just talked about, I'll put them in the notes section on the YouTube for the replay for those that are watching. But thanks again. If you end up needing or having questions that come up for you as you're watching the replay, feel free to send them to me. Or send them to Randall. I do have a link in my profile that's like Ask ADHD at Work, and you can just submit a question and then I'll answer it on a live or a post. So feel free to do that. And then I got to jump in because it's a group coaching session happening right now for my members in Thrive. But everybody else, have a good night and we will talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye.